So at the end of 2013, I woke up on what seemed like a normal day, and I went to businessinsider.com, and on the front page was something I didn't expect to see, which was my face. I was also on The Atlantic. It was a super surreal moment, and definitely not a good way. For several months leading up to that morning, I had a site called viralnova.com. It was just like really simple in nature. I'd find little known inspirational stories, artists, things like that, write an article, craft really compelling headlines and thumbnails, something that everybody knows kind of is very important now. But back then, I was one of the only ones doing it. I was one of the first ones to kind of, understand why that's so important. The site grew to making as much as $450,000 a month, like a 95% profit margin. I was doing like 7 million visits some days, and nobody knew who was behind it because I didn't have any like funding or employees, no fancy offices. I was just running everything out of my home office in Ohio at the time. And considering like everybody's Facebook feeds were literally flooded with Viral Nova content, naturally journalists in the media, they started digging and trying to figure out who was behind this new site that was just taking over everybody's feeds. In particular, there was one journalist who got really good at tracking me down, and I started getting phone calls and emails to addresses I barely even checked anymore. And I guess I just didn't really realize how big the site was to merit this kind of investigative work. So when I woke up in, December 2013 to a very public and very personal article detailing like everything I've done in my internet career, it was actually pretty horrifying. I was just running Viral Nova under the radar while it lasted. It just like always felt like it wasn't going to last because it was doing so well, and just, it was this weird phenom, and like servers were going down, and, it was a lot of stress, but it was under the radar. And what got really bad, and the worst part of the whole experience, was the attention. It was right around that time that I learned about another person who's on the whole other side of the planet who was feeling something similar in an even more dramatic way. And, pretty much everybody knows this person, or at least what he created. And for this video, I really wanted to do a deep dive to really understand what exactly happened and why somebody would walk away from $50,000 a day. How did that happen in the first place? What can we all learn from it? And I am, of course, referring to Dong Nguyen and his game, Flappy Bird. You might remember Flappy Bird. If you don't remember Flappy Bird, it was basically this incredibly simple but incredibly frustrating game that you could play on your iPhone or Android device. You would basically navigate this little bird between pipes by tapping on your screen, and you had to avoid the pipes. And if you died, you started over, and that was pretty much it. But it was really, really difficult, like extremely difficult. But going back a little bit, through 2013, the game had basically no users. And actually, when it launched, it wasn't even called Flappy Bird. It was called Flap Flap. Random one-person game, was really nothing special, at least for its first many, many months. I think it launched in May of 2013. And fast forwarding to early 2014, I went to Reddit, and I found a thread. It was from January 2014, and the user had basically asked people to download and play the game to help out a friend's uncle. This was pretty obviously the developer himself trying to avoid, getting banned for self-promotion. And later, this original poster, he even started interacting with people about the game's features and releases. So it was obviously the developer trying to tell people to go play his game, which is fine. I mean, it's not fine by Reddit rules, but I get it. Anyway, the thread really wasn't popular whenever he first posted it. It's hard to say what impact that thread really had on the growth of the game, but coincidentally or not, it was only a few days later where the game basically like shot to #1 in the App Store. Very shortly after it shot to #1, the viral effect just immediately took hold. I'm going to get into this a lot more toward the end of the video because I really want to dissect how this even happened. But the sheer frustration of this game just dying over and over, it just led users to go on social media and posting their frustrations. It basically memified the game. And there were just so many tweets and posts about how this game was just so frustrating. It sort of became a thing to want to put your head through the wall playing Flappy Bird, which then when you see your friend write that, it leads you to want to go and download the game. But what really put fuel on the fire of Flappy Bird is when the YouTuber PewDiePie played it, and that was January 27th.
All right. That went great.
From here, it rose to the top, and it had an estimated 50 million players, which is literally insane. And, like Viral Nova, anytime something mysterious comes out of nowhere, people want to know who's behind it. And that's what I want to get into now. Because it turned out that Dong Nguyen, he made this game in like 2 or 3 days in Vietnam, his home country. And there's no possible way that he had any idea what was going to happen. Dong was a, quiet guy living a quiet life with basically a passion for creating games that had more of like a retro feel, like the Mario Brothers, the old stuff like that. And you can see it in Flappy Bird that there's inspiration, obviously. But there's really nothing nothing publicly remarkable about Dong at all before this. But like once the game went viral and all the attention started pouring in, you could literally witness his emotional roller coaster almost in real time on Twitter. He was this combination of thankful but regretful and anxious all at the same time. And then when the news got around that it was making $50,000 a day, it just fueled the attention, the fire. This guy who just wanted a simple life was suddenly being hounded by the media and his own users and everyone in between. Some of the tweets were a lot to take, and you could tell it was getting to him, and I totally understand. And on top of that, you had respected game critics coming out to say this game is basically trash or it copies other games, which there is some truth there, but being thrown into this madness and getting all this attention quite literally overnight isn't something a lot of people can handle. And Dong Nguyen, from everything I have read about him, he's a very introverted guy. He just enjoys developing games, not dealing with harsh criticisms or even praises, to be quite honest. Eventually, all of this affected him so much he literally couldn't take it anymore. And fortunately, that didn't go where it might have sounded like I was taking it. But to everyone's surprise, he said he was shutting the game down. And a lot of people, because this thing had so much attention, they started speculating that this was an attention grab to get more publicity. But he genuinely couldn't take it anymore. And on the day that he said he would shut it down, he did. He shut it down. Flappy Bird was completely removed from the App Store. Dong was free from, I guess, the prison that he accidentally put himself in. Kind of, anyway. Even more speculation started. Some were saying he was being sued by Nintendo for using similar graphics, something that was later completely dismissed by a Nintendo spokesperson. And some people still believe that, by the way. Others even said he killed himself. The game, it just brought out some really, really crazy stuff. But really, the truth was that he just couldn't handle it anymore. And I found this one interesting comment digging through like literally hundreds of YouTube comments. It actually wasn't the Twitter posts and game critics in American media. It was actually the paparazzi in Vietnam itself that led him to shutting it down. according to this commenter, the media in the country were like praising him to promote national pride and his success story, which, that might sound like a blessing, but if you're not someone seeking attention, it's kind of an awful feeling. And I remember this to a degree with Viral Nova. It feels like it just feels like such an invasion of privacy, and it's not what you wanted. Like, you wanted to create cool things, not become famous. And those are very different things. Rich and famous is the quote, but why is it rich and famous? It could be rich or famous. But according to the same comment, other game companies in Vietnam, probably out of jealousy, were threatening to sue him and report him for unpaid taxes. And basically his life was just becoming becoming very stressful. And this is a guy who just wanted to create simple games and live a simple life. And the attention was overwhelming, and he genuinely just wanted to prioritize his mental health over money. Like, how dare he? But I want to talk a little bit about how all this was possible, and I talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the video. Like, when I was really looking at it and factoring in how this happened, it's really not luck. I think there's a good degree of timing here that matters a lot, but I wanted to kind of hit a few things that he executed really, really well, whether on purpose or not. So number one, it's simple. It's very, very simple. Life is already complicated enough, and people don't want to spend a lot of time learning something, really, especially if it's an app on their phone to just pass time. You fully understand how Flappy Bird works in literally like 5 seconds. And it's as simple as it comes. You can literally tap the screen to make your bird jump, and you avoid obstacles, and that's it. And when you die, you start again right away. It's really quick. That kind of creates a little bit of an addicting, like, I got 2 points. Surely I can give 3. This game's so simple. What is wrong with me? Why can't I do a little bit better? But it's just a very punishing game. And, that's kind of the other thing that I think is huge here. It's very, very punishing. It's very, very difficult. And that matters in this case. And one thing that I discovered in my research that I think was an accident, maybe, was that the bird's hitbox was actually slightly off. So this means you'd actually avoid one of the pipes successfully, but you'd still die. And this small little bug, it added another level of punishment because it just didn't seem fair, because it wasn't fair. Another reason that I think it did well, and this is just my opinion, I do believe he made a comment at one point about this, but Angry Birds was obviously huge, still is, and I think that the familiarity, Flappy Bird, Angry Birds, I do believe that he might have called it that deliberately. So that familiarity is kind of interesting. But another reason is just how perfect this game was for posting publicly. In most games, you really only post if you're great at it. This one, you actually got rewarded on social media for posting how bad you are at it. And that created like a memeified situation where your friends would read how bad you are and they would think, well, this game can't be that bad, that hard. Then they would get it, and everything was just very straightforward. You learned it quick. There was no BS, no tutorials, nothing. And so in reflecting on this success, I really don't think you could repeat it with just those elements, but I think there are a lot of valuable lessons here too. And, a lot of times when everyone in the industry is chasing a certain trend, you can have success by going back to the core. Like, businesses and marketers, they have a tendency to overcomplicate everything instead of just focusing on fulfilling a very basic need. So what do I really think about Dong's decision in shutting this down? First of all, I want to be really fair and open and honest in this. And I calculated he probably made about $750,000 while the game was up in just those short few weeks. But it's also important to note that whenever he removed it, the game still existed on everybody's phones who had it before. So it's a little bit, misleading. He probably went on to make many more hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't have any information on exactly how much it was, but I'm sure he's into the 7 figures in earnings, probably even multi 7 figures, maybe. I don't know. Definitely eases the sting of shutting down your operation if you're still profiting from it after you shut down. But I can see why he removed it, just to make a statement that he's finished with the game. I don't want the publicity anymore, and I totally get that. But there were many times I just wanted Viral Nova to go away, despite how much money it was making. And some of my tweets are all still out there, showing how I was feeling at the time. And it's why I decided to look for a buyer and got out of it, because it was rough. And the media, they can be ruthless, and I know they're just doing their jobs, but sometimes their jobs hurt people who don't deserve it or want their attention. And I think that can be unfair, but I know it's life. But I remember some of the headlines about me in Viral Nova. I mean, I even somehow ruined the internet. So I feel for Dong and everything he went through, and I completely understand his decision. I found another comment from someone who seems to know him, at least to some degree, and I kind of thought that it said pretty much everything to wrap up kind of this story. So he's doing okay and still working as a game developer silently. Currently, he works with his team to develop a new game that he stated to be very unique. If you're curious about the money he made, he spent his money to help young developers create games, not in an investment way, but more as charity work. This guy literally is too good for this world. And during my research for this video, I came across so many others about Flappy Bird on YouTube, and they all used a very similar headline that was something to the effect of how this game ruined the creator's life. And it didn't ruin his life. His experience in those few weeks that led him to shutting down the game, it put so much into perspective for him. And he's obviously gone on to live the life he actually wants, with now most likely a nest egg to probably do it for the rest of his life, which I think is pretty awesome. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about the story of Flappy Bird for a long time and how much it actually meant to me. My timeline with Viral Nova was really similar, and it's just something that's hard to explain or even understand, because people think they can deal with virtually anything if it means making money. And maybe a lot of people can, but for me, there's definitely a point where my mental health is worth far more than money. I mean, if you don't have your health, including your mental health, the money really doesn't matter anyway. So, all right. Thanks for watching. Bye.